Or shot fire, officer down, shot fire, officer down. Got a city officer down, shot fire.
223, be advised, we have a visual on enemy paratroopers in grid Papa uniforms.
Welcome to the Resilient Warrior Nation, a podcast dedicated to inspiring hope and healing for first responders, military veterans, and anyone facing PTSD and trauma. All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to the inaugural podcast of the Resilient Warrior Nation. My first guest is a huge honor for me to have. This is Taylor Cavanaugh. Taylor went from jail to Navy SEAL, back to jail, suicidal to French Foreign Legionnaire, learning to self-actualize his divine design via a correct system of life disciplines. Now he's on a mission to show others how to realign their lives to experience peace and clarity by training the mind deliberately as well as the body, showing others how to get their fire for life back as he's done for himself. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome Taylor Cavanaugh to my first podcast. Brother, it is great having you.
Inaugural Resilient Warrior podcast, bro. That fucking sounds good. Damn.
Yes, I am absolutely pumped. And for those who are watching, my first 5 guests, Taylor being, my boy, I want to be transparent. Taylor and I are friends as well. Taylor is my mindset coach, but I'm going to have Taylor. I have his former SEALs, Zach Ferguson. We're going to have Jimmy the Man Watson. We're going to have Wiz Buckley, a former FAD pilot. And last but certainly not least, and not in this order in any way whatsoever, we're going to have Matthias Ferreira, who is a friend of mine, and he is a double amputee. He is the first double amputee police officer in the United States. He was a former Marine. He got hit by an IED, lost both legs, and it's unbelievable what he has overcome. I started this podcast because I myself suffer from PTSD. Healing is not linear. You're constantly healing and evolving, but I've reached the point now where I am pretty happy in life, and it is my life's purpose now to give back. So I started this channel in that vein. I want to bring on ordinary men who have done extraordinary things with their lives, some of which who have found themselves at the lowest depths that they ever thought possible. But each and every one of these men and women that I want to focus on and bring to you has ascended and have reached healthy heights. And I want to show every man and woman who is going through it right now that there is nothing special about anyone that I have on this podcast. They've done extraordinary things. But firstly, human beings, and for you men and women who are going through it, there is hope, and you will see that in every story that I bring you. So Taylor, welcome.
Hey, I appreciate that, man. Just in thinking about this, Mike, about the word resilient. It's an important word because, man, what is it, right? It's ability to push through, ability to come back from, ability to just keep coming back, right? Resilient. And if that's the key is just keep showing up.
Yep.
Then, man, anybody can do that. And that's
Exactly.
so important to what you said. What's that movie where they say, man, the only difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that little bit extra, right? And it's like,
Exactly, man.
It's so true because it's really the difference between somebody that does something extraordinary or is just average is really just small incremental things done over an extended period of time. And that's what I think the key to resiliency. What is resiliency? It's grit. It's just a grit, man, that you're not going to be deterred. And that's why I really like the name of your podcast, Mike, because in your story, man, you could have faded away, bro, into
Absolutely. Oblivion.
You could have faded away into Florida and been riding your golf cart around and just kind of got fat, and you could have, right? And just lived in pills and easy. You could have retired and just disappeared. But instead, you come back, right? Like a rising phoenix, man. And come back and actually offer something to somebody, and that's anybody watching this. That's, I always think destiny's by design. It's by God's design, universe design. Is you're watching this, and if there's something here that's speaking to you, well, then you got to act, man. There's some things that you take some action on, and it doesn't have to be wildly hard left or hard right. A lot of times it's a slight gradual just turn back onto the road.
Exactly. And I think one key point, as I go through all these stories, we're going to illustrate what these different men and women have gone through. But people who are watching have to realize that it is incumbent upon you to get up and make those moves. No one, as we've discussed previous, is coming to your house, throwing you over their shoulder, taking you to wherever you need to be and getting you help. You are the person in charge of your destiny. And again, as far as extraordinary, what makes a man extraordinary? You know what? As far as I'm concerned, it's the guy who got up after that eighth fall and got up again. The ordinary man sits on his ass and doesn't do it. He quits at that point. When you quit
Yeah.
is when you lose.
Yeah.
DJ Shipley says, just try to get 1% better every day. You don't have to do it all in one shot. That 180 doesn't have to be, it's not going to be in one shot usually. Just 1% better, man. Every day, just get a little better. And your only competition is that man in the mirror staring back at you. No one else. Doesn't matter what anyone else in this world is doing.
Yeah, and that getting up, reaching out, and that can mean a few different things, right? It can mean quite literally getting up right off the fucking couch
Yeah,
and
literally.
start moving, right? It can be that first walk around the block if you've never exercised in 10 years, right? It
Yep.
can start small. I mean, even David Goggins says about, right, when he was fat, dude, he couldn't run a mile, right? And now look what he's
Absolutely.
doing, right? It would have never dreamed, but it doesn't start unless you actually get up off the couch. But it can also mean a few different things. It could also mean reaching out to somebody. It can also mean admitting it to yourself, reality,
Yep.
getting honest. That's what it has to mean first.
Yeah, I mean, you have to get honest with yourself or it's never going to work.
Yeah. And so that moment of when you realize that nobody's coming to save you, like you said, Mike, nobody's coming to throw you over their shoulder and run you to the the medicine, the this or that, the gym. Nobody's coming to do that. And so when you decide to make that choice, well, that's oftentimes pretty fucking scary
Yeah.
because now you have to step across that gap. If you've never been in a gym, it's walking into a very uncomfortable place. We've all walked into fight gyms and stuff before. Your first time, it's scary.
Yeah. Any
But
gym.
you have
No one goes in there in shape. You're either fat or you're skinny when you go in there to begin with. So as far as being intimidated, don't. It's just like being a rookie cop, man. Everyone starts at a certain point and no one's got any of that knowledge. But
yeah.
with experience comes knowledge. And yeah, it's great to be uncomfortable because you're expanding your horizons, you're learning, you're growing.
You have to be willing to look stupid,
Yep.
and that's what a lot of people. Dude, Mike, you and I, bro, I've looked stupid a lot, more often than not, because
Yeah.
I try to keep pushing into things that I'm not really good at, and I still have things that I can push into more, but I'm willing to be honest about what I don't know
Yeah.
and be honest about, hey, what I need help with. And I think that that's been very helpful for me in my life was I had no problem. Sometimes I've lied to myself, and so I couldn't even admit to somebody else, of course. But when I did get honest, I had no problem going, hey, I need help with this. Or
Yeah.
I need some guidance here. Or I don't know what the fuck to do with my hands, right? With regarding daily habits or tracking macros or any of this. And man, it's all good. Nobody who's doing anything is ever going to judge you because nobody punches down, man. People punch up.
Exactly. Yep.
So no, you walking into a gym, whatever, it's probably one of the most accepting places you'll ever go. Truthfully,
Yeah.
there's nobody in there. It's one of the most accepting, like loving places you'll be in is at a gym for the most part. And so because people are in there high vibrational, and we're kind of getting on the gym piece, but it's important because I say that because Mike, you agree with this completely. Is Wellness starts with your physical body. It's very difficult to be sound of mind if your body's trashed. It's almost
Yeah.
impossible. Also, just the daily habits that go along with it and the disciplines and the self-worth that you build. So people that are watching, man, if you're having that lack of confidence as a man or woman and you're just not like you can't fully be present unless you're proud of your presence.
Yes.
And being present is one of the main pieces of overall wellness and clarity. And so if that's the piece that is your first, that's the first piece. Get proud of yourself, and then you can start working on some of those other the more difficult psychological issues because the body's actually simple.
Yeah. I think it's the simplest. It's just like pain. Most people, if you were to poll 100 people, 99 of those 100 would rather go through physical pain because you go through that and then you heal. Mental pain stays with you. And it's the same thing with
Yeah.
what you're saying. Same respect. The physical is easy, man. The mental is what works on you. And, frankly, a lot of us don't know how to get out of that mental pain. You're stuck in this vicious cycle. And sometimes as a man, I know when I was going through my PTSD, I'm pretty self-aware and I knew I wasn't right, but I really wasn't sure of the exact cause. And looking back now, there was a few things that were causing it. It wasn't just one. But, with the PTSD itself, I was mistaken. I was under the impression that I had to see my fellow brother or sister get killed next to me. And that's what
Yeah.
caused it. No, mine was internalizing other people's pain. Being in the middle of their most devastatingly intimate moments of their lives over and over and over. I saw a study recently where they said the average civilian is involved in 2 to 3 critical incidents in their lifetime. My first night out of the Atlanta Police Academy, I was at 2 homicide scenes. And I was thinking about it the other
Oh
day.
man. Wow.
I probably worked 6 or 7 thousand days in my life. I cannot imagine how many different scenes that I've been to like that, critical incidents. I mean, literally, bro, it's got to be in the thousands. And how do you deal
That's
with that?
crazy, bro.
It's
That's
nuts.
wild. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe Rogan was just talking about it the other day. He was talking to a special forces guy, and then he was talking to a cop, and they were kind of comparing stories. And the special forces guy said, man, I can't imagine the stuff that a cop sees over 20, 30 years of their life. Obviously, I'm not saying that the intensity of a special forces or any military member, they're not seeing intense stuff, especially when you see your brother or your sister getting killed or, wounded. But when you spread it out over so many years, I don't think that people really give it the gravitas that it deserves, and
Well,
no one really
I would
teaches you how to deal with it.
well, I would say most special operators, if they're worth their salt, it will totally be like, oh, dude, first responders take the cake because of the aggregate and the fact that you have to go home and fucking tell your wife to pass the salt after.
Yeah, yeah.
You
You,
know what
you
I mean?
literally you turn it on and you turn it off, man.
There's no decompression chamber. You're like, again, like
Absolutely.
you said, like you're on the next call.
Yep.
See, and having to be a reasonable human, or else you're gonna get caught on camera. And it's like, so you have pressure, not to mention political pressure back at the station, pressure at home, pressure with actual fucking thing, bro, pressure to actually perform,
Yeah.
and all that stuff is compressed and compressed and compressed over 20 years, 30 years, bro. It is, I don't even think it's close because that it's just expected. Oh, that's your job. Yeah, but that doesn't change the fact that massive impact is happening. Dude,
Yeah.
thousands of, you're walking up on carnage often and then kind of having to write a report about it and move on. It's pretty
Yeah, I
powerful.
mean, it happens so often. You forget so many thousands of things you've been involved in. You forget about them. I thought about one the other day, man. It was a family man hung himself in his kitchen on an oak beam. And, thank God we got home before the family did. I think his brother was the one that arrived and found him. So, bro, a couple hours later, they have to take him down. I'm helping the Emmy's helper holding his legs because we have to cut him off the beam. Get done with that. Now the family's outside. We have to console them. And now I'm back in service. half hour later going to whatever BS call came up, and now I'm supposed to
Wow.
act normal and supposed to be
Damn.
pretend like nothing ever happened. I didn't just go through this traumatic event. More so for this family, but still, you're going through it yourself. You don't acknowledge it. You have to stay hyper focused. And, I hate to say it, it sounds cold, but you don't even think of them as human beings, because once you do,
Yeah.
then you start thinking about it being a father and a
Yeah. You
husband
gotta.
and everything else that goes along. You cannot do it, man. And,
Yeah.
people think we're cold, but it's the only way you could deal with it. And yeah, we'll deal with it with morbid jokes. Other than that, you walk in, you see that scene, excuse my French, what the fuck else are you supposed to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You look at your buddy and you're just trying to break the ice, because it's it's such a devastating thing that for someone else, but you don't acknowledge the fact that
Well, you can't.
this is burning into your psyche too.
You can't. It's too heavy, dude. You're like, oh, this dude's having a bad day.
Yeah, your mind can't even
You
process it.
gotta, yeah, you have to joke. It's the only way to kind of keep it fucking light. It's not unreasonable. It's survival mechanism,
Yeah,
right? And so what are you
exactly.
gonna do? Walk in and cry? It's not professional, right? It's
No,
like you also have to be locked on, man. And so you have to be kind of a robot. I honestly don't know, and then you're driving how that's even possible or how that's expected for someone to not have an impact of it. Because, then you're driving home, it's like, honey, I told you to get eggnog. And you're like, you know what I mean? It's like you're like immediately supposed to turn into this caring person when you've just had to shift from. It's got to be one of the most challenging things that is not really. It's talked about a little bit now, but I don't think it's really like people really grasp the gravity of the carnage that you guys see.
no, and you come home and you don't want to bring that into the house. So what
No.
do? How was your day? Good. And you're not really,
Yeah,
you're
good.
again staying closed, man. Yeah,
Good.
had a good day. I mean, just
Yeah.
think about leaving that house, man, and something happens and you pull a car over. Now, you have to be tactically sound, so you try to concentrate on what's going on, but you still have that in the back of your head. Now, if someone says something wise to you, and you're supposed to maintain this professionalism at all times, especially now with us being on
Yeah.
camera. God forbid you curse or say something, make a snide remark or whatever it is, just kind of talk out of turn. It's a very fine line, man, and some people handle it better than others. You have to be physically and mentally ready. One of the things I talk to cops about, it's not just that. I see a lot of cops going to work anxious every day because they're not physically and mentally ready to do the job. If something kicks off, deadly force situation or whatever, they haven't been prepared. If someone's kind of accosting them, same as some of these auditors now following around with cameras, they don't know the law. So it's like they go to work every day behind the eight ball and they're waiting for the dominoes to fall. And, they're almost like walking around with PTSD every day of their careers. I've seen it multiple times. I don't know how you
Yeah.
could do that job in that mindset every day, not being ready. Dude, it's not false bravado, man. I was ready to die, ready to give my life. I never thought of it, never feared it. All I asked God was, if it's my destiny, just please let me kill the guy who kills me. I just want to go out like a warrior. That was it. That was it, man. I asked for a warrior's death. It's not false bravado. You could ask guys at work, but I told them to tell my family if I died
Oh,
in line of
bro, that's
duty,
awesome.
I was cool with that
Oh,
death.
yeah.
But
That's
other
so funny, dude.
guys,
I thought you were gonna say something kind of like, you're like, dude, I just wanted to kill the guy that killed me. I love that, dude. Because it's true.
that's the way I wanted to go out. If that was my destiny, I'm not trying to glorify it. I didn't want to die.
Yeah, I
I
get
don't
it.
want to devastate my family and my
Yeah,
friends. But if
yeah,
that
we
was
get
my
it.
destiny, that's the way I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys go to work fearing that, and I don't know how you do that at a job like that, because it could be at your doorstep like that, man.
Well, dude, self-doubt and a lot of self-doubt is rooted in the work we're not doing. So
Exactly.
in this, and like, if you're terrified before giving a speech or doing a presentation, well, it's because you're not prepared, right? And a lot of times you'll have a little fear, but like terrified, it means you're not prepared. If you're at a job like
Yep.
that, man, and you're worried someone's going to ask you a question about if they're required to show you ID or not, and you don't know the code, and you're like, you know, yeah, you have a lot of holes in your game, and so that is scary because if one of them gets shown a light on, man, that's not going to look good. It's going to be pretty embarrassing. Also, if guys are going in overweight, can't run a mile, can't run 500 meters without huffing and puffing, that's pretty scary too, right? Not
Yeah.
not not being confident in your own physical ability, bro. There's some big scary motherfuckers out here on these streets
Hell
on
yeah.
drugs who don't give nothing to lose, and dude, you're the one in their way. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd want to make damn sure I was at least the deck was stacked in my favor as much as possible.
Exactly. Like when I was in the academy and since in Atlanta, we watched FBI videos, and they would go in prisons and they would talk to the prisoners. And so one kind of videos was they would talk to prisoners who attack cops or kill cops, and they say, "Why did you do it to him?" And to a man, essentially, it was like because it looked like I could to him. And they would also show videos of these guys training in the yard. They would pretend be hands on a wall, like the other prisoner would be pretending to handcuff them, and they were all practicing techniques on how to defeat the cops. So these guys were actively doing this. And there's a thing called command presence. And command presence is essentially when you exit that car, someone looks at you, man. Do you bring that look to where you look like you are squared away and no one is going to mess with you? That's like 95% of showing up is having that look. Most people aren't going to try you, even if you don't know what you're doing, if you look like you know what you're doing. Now, if you look like a bag of laundry and you roll out of that car, 100 pounds overweight, they're going to try you, man. If I was a perp, you're my guy.
Yeah.
I'm trying, I'm not trying Taylor. I'm not trying Mike. They look like they can, handle the job. That other guy, though, man, what's he going to do? And you see it all the time.
There's a guy I know. There's a guy who's he owns like a private military company, and he said, very interesting cat, international. He's like 60 something, bro, still opping, shredded, like really in shape, tattoos up his neck, smoking a cigarette, and he was talking to me about who he hires, and you know what he called it? He called it physical deterrent.
Yeah.
I hire people with physical deterrent because you avoid a lot of problems if you look like you're a problem. And I get the chills because I think about that a lot. Is you avoid a lot of shit by looking really aggressive, and you're not a target, right? You're either prey or a predator. Predators don't want to fuck with other predators often.
Nope.
It's because it's dangerous. Right? You don't want to nobody wants to get hurt. Nobody wants to get fucking blasted. And so you're gonna go after the weakling. And I know in the teams, bro, looking cool, dialed in, and I'm sure it's like this in the police world, is if a guy's kit is tight, his uniform fits, he looks fucking the part. A lot of times, more often than not, he actually does know what he's doing because he's aware of all the little things, right? I've almost never seen somebody that looked exactly, man, that guy looks like he knows what the fuck he's doing. Who didn't? I can't even think of a time because it's somebody that's thorough. Somebody that's thorough and looks the part, more often understands what they need, what needs to be where, what systems are slick. That is important, and I think that's important for people watching to, bro, look cool, man. It's fucking important is to look fucking cool, look put together, look competent. You don't got to look like some scary motherfucker, right? You don't got to go run off and get tattoos. But, man, look capable. Yeah. Look capable, look put together, be deliberate about how you present yourself. And I think that's the big point here is be deliberate about how you're presenting yourself because presentation matters. It is perception's reality. If somebody perceives you as a fucking sloppy fucking wet paper bag, dude, somebody's coming and now you're dealing with a problem that you could have avoided.
Yeah. They're going to take the path of least resistance. And who wouldn't?
Yeah.
Who wants to go with a guy that can handle himself or they think that he can handle himself? And it's, also, as you know, when you train, man, you just develop this quiet confidence about you. But, you're not walking around cocky or anything like that, but You can tell, man, when a guy's got confidence, just the way he looks,
Yeah,
just the way he talks. He doesn't have to walk up yelling at everyone. He'll walk up to a scene, just be like, yo, what's going on? Makes eye
yeah,
contact. If something's about to kick off, he's staring through a man's eyes. I mean, I remember telling guys when it was about to go down, I'd be talking smack and I'd just be chilling. And I'm like, bro, you got to understand, you're not even a man to me. You're just a target. And,
yeah, yeah,
a lot of times they're
yeah.
taking it back. And I wasn't messing around, man. But a lot of times there's been very, very few guys who wanted to take it past that point. I'm like, let's go. I don't talk, bro. Let's go. And, again, not false bravado. It was just kind of the way I was taught. It was just, you develop this quiet confidence. You don't have to prove it to anyone. I used to tell my rookies, you get to a scene, there's a guy with no shirt on, screaming, yelling, you know who I am? Don't even sweat him. You have nothing to worry about. It's that cat sitting in the corner with that 1,000-yard stare saying nothing. Watch him.
Yeah, 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 and these systems and these pattern recognition is really what it is. Over time, you got to be good at pattern recognition, man. People who look dangerous a lot of times are right,
Yep.
and that's how they would teach us in special operations when you're deploying. Man, who do you need to be watching for? Body language, man. Body language, right? Physical deterrent, very important in. And I think that really boils down to self awareness a lot of times. And I think that that's what all of us should always strive to be better at every day is being more self aware, right? Am I actually presenting myself how I want to be perceived?
Yeah.
That's important. That's an important question. And it can be our way of communicating, it can be our way of listening, more importantly, right? There's so many things. This goes into our relationships with our spouse or our loved ones or family or out in the streets, right? It's not just regarding like danger or physical issues out in the fucking world. Man, a lot of times this is, bro, am I being self-aware and being honest about who I am, how I'm presenting myself physically, emotionally, spiritually, like all these different pieces that connect. It's it's this constant evolution of self, people getting more and more aware, and it takes stripping down a lot of the bullshit that we do. And that was
Yeah.
kind of what, and Mike, we've talked, and part of my path was I had to strip away a lot of noise before I could really understand these things because I was so fucking just focused and tunnel vision, dude. I wasn't taking any time to self reflect, really. I thought I was, but I really wasn't because and the proof of that was I wasn't changing much. I was still doing
Right.
the same shit,
Yeah.
right? The proof of
Yep.
honest self-reflection is you actually make some changes, and I hadn't been, but that my life got better, and this what we're all talking about, resilient warrior. What are we all talking about here, man? We're talking about getting back to a higher quality of life, and all this conversation about presentation and this, man, it's all rooted back to this. You become more self-aware, more deliberate, your life's going to get better. Your
Yeah.
relationships, your job, your daily clarity, all these things are going to get better once you start to understand yourself more. So you understand what you need and what you don't. Often more, times more
Exactly.
importantly, and that's people, places, and things. You realize what's not working for you anymore. Right? What worked for us in a previous chapter might kill us in the next.
Yep.
All these things that are very important. That just because you were doing it, it was working, doesn't mean it's going to keep working. Right? And some like you I'll take your story, Mike, in the sense of you being a cop, you having a certain personality for all those years, bro. If you kept carrying that into this phase of your life, this chapter, bro, it's like your quality of life's gonna deteriorate quick, closed
Yeah.
off, sharp, like just all that, dude. You're not gonna thrive in this phase. You survived and thrived in last phase that way, but in this phase, and my boy Jimmy, when you talk to him, will say something very similar. I'm sure it's we've got to evolve. Keep
Exactly.
watching, bro. We have got to evolve. That change, you got to shed the old identity, shed the old uniform, which you and I, there's a time we put on the uniform for one last time. There was a
Yeah.
time we took it off and we never put it back on. So who the fuck are you? Well, Well,
It's a great question.
you're still a person, you're still a man, right? So who is that person? Well, we need to redefine it. You're no longer a cop. I'm no longer a SEAL, no longer in the military. That's not me, right? I'm not going to hang my hat on that forever and sit around the fucking campfire and talk about what I used to do. That's not healthy, right? And so we got to redefine who we are and who we're moving towards and who we actually need to be in this phase. And that's what I think a resilient warrior, what that term means to me is somebody who's willing to adapt.
Yeah.
Adaptability is a fucking warrior. A true warrior, special operations, what makes them great? Adaptability. The Mongols, all these motherfuckers, man, moving into different terrains, they adapted, right? And it's like, and the ones that didn't, man, they got, they got people whose armies got overrun. They weren't willing to
Yeah.
change.
Yeah, I thought I was at peace when I retired. I was medically retired. For those that don't know, I blew out my back at work, and I had a couple of back surgeries. And I kind of struggled after I retired. And Taylor knows the story. Yeah, I healed myself using plant-based medicines, ayahuasca specifically. And I remember on that journey, Mother Ayahuasca, for those that don't know, most people sense a female presence. I did myself. They call her Mother Ayahuasca. And she was speaking to me during my journey. And she told me, your time is done. You did the best you could, but you are no longer that. And you can let everything go. And man, I became at such peace at that point. Like, it was just put to bed. I am done. I am no longer him. I will never wear a uniform again. I knew that already, but there was such a sense of peace and tranquility at that point in my life. And, I thank God for that medicine because it truly changed my life. Eddie Penny, who I will meet in person one day and thank. I would love to have him on my podcast. For those who don't know, he's a former Navy SEAL. He was getting interviewed by Sean Ryan on his podcast. And Eddie was recounting the Extortion 17 incident in which his best friend, Jason Workman, was killed. And Eddie was visibly upset. And as I listened to him, I just thought of a call I had involving a 2-year-old found drowned in a pool a few years before. We resuscitated her, and thank God she's thriving now, but at the time she was not. And I lost it. I started crying like a baby, and that's when I realized I had PTSD. So it's amazing the way things work. But I kind of want to shift gears a little bit because we have men and women who are watching this right now who are going through it. And I'd like to kind of go back and, we don't have to get that in depth as to what was going on, but kind of tell them what was going on at the end of your SEAL career because, I want to show them that you kind of hit the lowest of lows and how you resurrected yourself, became the man you are now, to show them that there is hope for them as well.
Yeah. And so out of the, I was in the SEAL teams for 7 years and some change. And at the tail end, right, I had stacked some legal problems, some bar fights and fucking drinking and, just what do you know? And so I'm getting pushed out of the military after a failed steroid test. And that was it. So I was no longer, I wasn't doing drugs in the military and shit like that. That wasn't really my jam. But when I got out, I was, but it wasn't like partying, man. I was working, right? And so I was doing Adderall, Xanax prescriptions, right? And then some opiates and so, smoking weed, but just.
And it's just to kind of dull the pain of the hurt of losing your SEAL career, you think?
Man, it was,
looking back?
it was, I wasn't self-aware enough to know what it was then, but it was definitely lack of purpose. But I also just didn't understand what the big deal was. I was like, why not? Fucking doctors give it to me. I can perform good, and it's a little bit more fun. It's like it kept maybe a little bit of that endorphins. Like it's more fun than fucking being completely sober. And so that was just, that was probably the truth. And maybe some emotional pain, sure, that I just kind of shelved. And you can't bend reality for that long. So anybody that's watching this, if you're in that where you're looking at your medicine cabinet and it looks like a fucking pharmacy, or you're having to do all these things every day, stand the fuck by. It's not going to last forever. It's not. And something's coming. It's not when, it's when. It's not if, it's when. And
I had an opioid issue too, so I just want to let everyone know. So I've been through it myself.
And it can be, you might lose your job, man. You lose your
Yep.
relationship. Something's gonna break because that's not how we're designed to live.
Exactly.
And so you're gonna start getting speed wobbles, is how I call it. And everyone could see them except me. So it was too late, right? I stacked on an opiate habit, and I was lying to myself because I still had outside measures of success. I was still going to the gym. I still looked good. I had the girlfriend and the house and the job and the truck and whatever. And so I was like, man, whatever. I think I cracked the code, man. And I can kind of do what I want to do. I cracked the code. But I was
Yep.
speed wobbling. I was missing meetings. I was spending money on like fucking hemorrhaging cash in every direction, living
Oh,
paycheck to
can
paycheck
imagine.
and making a ton of money and still living paycheck to paycheck, right? So that's another
Yep.
sign. My life was becoming unmanageable. Even though I have a high level of ability to manage things, it was still becoming unmanageable. And guess what? All came crumbling down when it all falls apart, like that fucking title,
Yeah.
man. It all came falling apart. And I found myself homeless in my truck with a sawed-off shotgun next to me for about a few days, man, with no money, nowhere to go, and like no gas, fucking like that, like bottomed out, man. And
Yep.
I realized, and I remember turning the key off to the truck. It was a moment, man. And I dropped Jimmy Watson off at the airport, actually.
Did you really?
Yeah. And it was this same day. And we had just been like on a little bit of, he was on the run and I was fucking, and we had been turning and burning for like a week. I dropped him off at the airport. I go back, but then I look at my bank account. I'm like, what the fuck, dude? Oh shit. And my gas is low. I'm like, let me just get somewhere where I can think and like for my next move. So I drove down into the jungle and backed my truck up into like this spot I knew it wouldn't be fucked with, right? Way off into the in the rural jungle. And I turned the key off. And I remember that moment where it went, ooh, and everything just went quiet. And like it had been almost 2 years to the day where I got out of the military to this point.
Okay.
And I went, oh, this is how it happens. It just sneaks up on you and you're fucking, and I had no more lies, no more things to point at, no more job, no more, I was still okay, but I was pretty haggard, right?
Yeah.
And I was like,
So the game was over, so to speak.
the game was over. The gig was up. There was
Yep.
there was no way to lie. And I went,
Right.
wow, okay, this is how it is, right? I can't even drive anywhere. I was like, fuck. And that was a crazy few days, man, where I just really thought about like, I was just tired, man. It wasn't like I was crying in my truck. I was way past that.
All
That
right.
was years prior. I was just like, well, how do I do this without making too much of a mess? You know, like how can I do this smoothly and not create a lot of
Are you in
damage?
touch with mom or anything at this point right now
I shut off
during
my
these
phone,
days?
man. I was in like a place with
Okay.
no service. I was like
Okay.
off the grid, right? I probably could have, but I wasn't. I didn't have the emotional bandwidth to talk to
Right.
anybody. And I'm sure anybody watching this, when you've been there, when you can't even have anybody else's input. It was just that I was so spread thin emotionally, and so that was the reality, man. I was suicidal, sitting in my truck, homeless.
Mm-hmm.
Really, right? That's where I was. And then I had that voice of God, man, or something. Something about being in the jungle was very powerful because I had no shirt. I'm sitting there in my fucking shorts, sitting on this like tree stump, and I'm sitting next to this cliff. Just and I kind of had this realization where I was like, bro, you're being really selfish, right? About you have people, and this is one piece. What depression is very selfish. And
Yeah.
it's like you're really the track you're playing in your head is me, I,
Yep.
poor me, or I. It's all I centric. And the minute when I thought about my mom, my sister, my friends, and people who love me, and I was like, you know what? I can't leave this legacy like this. I was like, if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna put it with my fucking boots on, man, at least. And so I was like, I'm gonna join the French Foreign Legion. I got one more push. I'm gonna fucking sack up. If I die, at least I'll do it over there with some fucking honor. Right? That's the way I fucking thought about it. It was kind of like not a suicide mission, but I was like, fuck it. If this is going down, then let's do it. And that was a very powerful place to be because I had nothing left to lose. And
Yeah,
so then I
yeah, it
had to
is.
figure it out. And so that was my path, man, into the Foreign Legion. And then years later, half a decade later, to this podcast with you, which was I used it as a vehicle of self development, and it was really stripping myself down. To anybody that doesn't know about the Foreign Legion, like a prison esque type environment where you're very locked down, very thumb on, and regimented, quite literally at the regiment, militant. And that's what I needed, bro. Making like no money, having guys with Russian accents yelling at me in French, and running in the snow. And I needed it though, and nobody gave a fuck. I was a SEAL.
Yeah.
you know,
So
Actually,
you're
I probably
literally like everyone else.
I got a little extra love probably scrubbing toilets. That's
Yeah.
all it really got me. It was no, and because it was really just what can you do for me now, and I actually needed it. It was a baptism in humility, and so that's what kind of led me to that self discovery of external things can't define you.
Okay.
It's
Now,
it
as I'm sorry. As far as
no,
your
go ahead, bro.
depression, how long would you say that took to lift once you went to the French Foreign Legion? Are we talking like
Bro,
months, couple of years,
3 years.
3 years?
Yeah,
All right.
probably.
But
Maybe like two and some change. And I don't mean like heavy depression, but the first year was rough.
right.
Because I was like
Still
shark shit on the
kind of
bottom of the
suicidal
ocean.
thoughts?
No,
Suicidal thoughts at
that's
that point or
past.
no?
No, it
Okay.
wasn't like that. I was definitely happy and to be in something positive, and that's an important lesson for anybody. Get into something positive. It doesn't
Right.
matter. It doesn't have to be your career path, or man, go start some MMA. Go get in a new job. If you go, it doesn't matter. Start moving. Set the stake. So momentum is what will keep you clear, and then you can start getting more momentum, and then figure out the path illuminates as we walk it. But for the first 6 months, man, I would look up at the fucking. I'd be out there in the field with these savages, and I'm like looking up at that. I'd see
Yeah.
a plane fly over, and I'd go, oh, I wonder where they're going. Just
How
I'd be
the other
like,
half lives at
how
that
the
point.
fuck, dude? Yeah, and so I always remembered that, but it wasn't that had lifted, right? That was really the only time, right, in my life. Like I've been pretty down, but that was the only time in my life where I was that low, where I was having those type of thoughts. After that, I was just sad. I was just like, fuck, man. I was like whatever the next level up is, that's where I was, because I was pretty
Ab-
haggard physically, right? I was I was, food deprivation, sleep deprivation, and cold, and so I'd lost my everything. I hadn't learned how to define myself yet through my own habits, and so that was a process of self discovery.
and how'd you start doing that? Because clearly you're into higher consciousness, philosophy. I mean, you're a very intelligent guy. So what do? You start reading books? Like, how does this whole process now start to where you are now?
Yeah. So there was a moment, and it was a few years in. Now I had some rank. I had a couple deployments under my belt. I was physically getting pretty back to it. So my momentum was good. I had a pretty good situation all set up. And then I was
Okay.
like, oh, fuck, I'm still not happy. you know?
Yeah.
And that was the moment where I went, oh. After I started looking at, all right, maybe mercenary companies in Africa, and Ukraine was kicking off. And I'm like, oh, I'll go contract there. And I had this moment where I realized, I'm like, bro, where does this end? Like,
Yeah.
you're just going to keep chasing this dragon's tail until you catch a bullet, right? You're not going to be happy there either. Right? You're
Right.
not, I was looking for the what without seeking the who first, or
Yeah. You can't run
discovering the
from
who
yourself.
first. Yeah. I'm like, dude, everywhere you go, there you are, right? I was like,
Yeah.
I was okay, happy, but I wasn't really fulfilled. And that was where I go, dude, fulfillment's not anywhere. It's right here. Everything you need is
Exactly.
already in you. And I'm sure that's what like ayahuasca and those things teach you. They show you that we're all it already.
Yep.
Like you start to find answers when you stop asking questions.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
that was a major piece. And so that point, yes. Then you need some outside information. Bro, I started listening to guys like Alan Watts. I started listening to like old professor. I started listening to old gurus. Man, I started reading Stoic philosophy, samurai philosophers, all these guys. I'm like, what? And they were all saying the same shit, right? And I was fascinated by that. And they call it, there's a word for it, collective unconscious,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is that collective group of wisdom, which why we all tap in. It's all connected, man. And once
Yeah, it
you
is.
start understanding is why when we talk about certain topics, does everybody know what we're talking about? It's because there's a and they've been talking about it for centuries. There's a
Yep.
collective understanding of wisdom that we all plug into, that when you really start to get aligned with those things and start understanding attractor patterns and high vibration and keeping yourself clear and not blocking your blessings and all these things, man, and you really live it and understand that closed doors, open doors, they all matter. Every decision matters, every thought matters, and you don't escape anything, and karmic debt's real,
Nope.
yada, yada, yada.
Yep.
I went, oh, there's no days off.
Yeah.
And that was a big
Exactly.
that was a big thing for me. There's no days off, and that's not saying you got to haze yourself every day. That's
No.
not. I'm not sadist like that. But I'm saying you got to. The universe doesn't take days off, and neither do we. Right? We
Yeah.
every day is you build your little bag of coins, and you wake up and you do the right things. There's a line. I think Marcus Aurelius says it, but it's some Stoic philosopher. He says, the bees wake up, the ants, everything wakes up and goes about their business. You think you're different?
Exactly.
No,
There's
no,
always
dude.
work to do. Always work.
Dude, you get up and start moving, man. We're human beings.
Yep.
We're animals. We're plugged into this universe like everybody else. Everything else gets up and starts moving without thinking about it too much. And it's just
Exactly.
humans in this element will sit on the fucking couch and they wonder why neurosis happens.
Yep.
Neurosis, if anybody deals with anxiety, depression, all these things, neurosis is defined as pain avoidance. Pain avoidance causes neurosis. People that are comfort seeking, that's what
Yeah.
causes neurosis. And why do you think it's prevalent everywhere? Everyone's depressed and everyone's got ADD and everyone's fucking, yeah, because everyone's try to not feel pain. And so
Yep.
it's just coming to them, bro. Man, what you
You can't
avoid
avoid
comes
life.
at you. Yeah.
Yeah. You cannot avoid life. I love Rocky's speech, and Rocky Balboa, he gives a speech to his son about
What's he
how hard
say?
life hits. It's essentially how, there's nothing that's going to hit harder than life. You can, either decide to, once you get hit, lay down, or get back up and get back at it again.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's the whole speech, but it's a beautiful speech. And it just, it's so applicable to every day of life. Where life ebbs and flows, man. We're all going through it. We're all imperfect human beings. You're never going to be on this ascension, and it's just going to keep going up. There's always a declination coming. But you know what? When that comes, my philosophy is thank the universe for everything it puts you through. So on that decline, man, no matter how visceral or painful that pain is, thank the universe for putting you through it, because it's going to make you stronger, more resilient. You have to feel it. You have to heal from it. Once you do, you're going to be the healthy individual. You can have healthy relationships. You don't look to other people for your happiness. You see so many, your friends, girls in relationships with guys. You're like, what is she doing? What is he doing? Because they're going to these people in these unhealthy relationships and looking for their happiness through them. You're never going to find it anywhere else but inside. I mean, you
Yeah.
ran to France. You were going to go around the world becoming a mercenary, and you realize, man, you can't run from yourself. It just
Yeah.
doesn't happen. You can never get that far away from yourself. Everything is internal. And once you realize that happiness and healthiness, then the rest of your life could be lived that way.
Yeah, and what was cool is the Foreign Legion barracks is a stressful environment. It's
Oh,
like
yeah?
it's just a lot of tension, right? It's a lot of you live, and so the head shed, you live in the building, right? And then the head
Okay.
shed's on the bottom, right? The leadership is in the offices in the bottom, and so you can't escape them calling you down or fucking fuck games, or there's a bar in the fucking place stacked
Yeah.
on top of it. So dudes are drunk. It's like coming in your room in the middle of the night and fucking trying to fight you and shit. It's a stressful environment. And so I was like, obviously that didn't happen for too long, right? Fucking they don't,
Yeah.
only a handful of guys come in there. They're like, that's not worth it, right? And so but the point is, is I was like, bro, if I can be good here, I'll be good anywhere. And I hit this point where I started having good days every day. And that was a really key point, like all, not like some, but every day was very positive. And people noticed it and they're like, man, dude, this dude's fucking. And I really was. It wasn't fake. I was really happy. I was up early before people, living my life deliberately and
Yep.
cleaning out a lot of the old, you know, bad shit, porn and thought and negative thoughts and, being mad and holding resentments and all. I just cleaned all that out. It was just all clutter, man. And once I did all that and really allowed myself to get clear, I was just like, wow, man, I feel a lot better. Not always euphoric, but man,
No.
sometimes I was. Sometimes I
Yeah.
was pretty euphoric, right? And then I was like, oh man, I can be good here. And that was a powerful feeling that dude, my environment didn't matter. I was good, right? Anybody could change my fucking way I viewed the world. I thought people that were really abrasive were funny. I didn't care anymore. And that was such a powerful feeling to not have any external things really influence my internal state. And that's
Yeah.
really what I've tried to carry out here now. Even I think it's harder out here in the streets because you have more distractions, more responsibilities, more things. And so it's harder. I'll admit that, but it's still possible, right? You still can live a very good life if we don't stack our own obstacles in our way, which we all do by
Yeah.
making poor choices. It's always poor choices. Nobody can do to us what we do to ourselves. And I love
Oh,
that saying
absolutely.
because we fuck our, yeah, of course, there's outside external things and tragic things that happen. But the truth is they're rarer than the shit we do to ourselves.
Oh, yeah. There are no victims, only volunteers, man. I love that saying too.
I love that's good.
Yeah. And it's literally truth. So let me ask you this now. You're obviously into counseling people or
Hmm.
coaching people. So you're getting guys to come to you now in, fragile mental states, depression, anxiety issues. What's
Yep.
your advice to them as they're going through it to help them?
Well, first thing I like to ask a lot of questions.
Hmm.
That's like what the first thing I got to figure out what the fuck the friction points are. And
Yep.
a lot of times it's very glaring. Some it's physical immediately. We could fix that first. Some are
Right.
already at a really high level of fitness but are still not experiencing clarity. And so those are a little bit more difficult, right? A lot of times their habits are still not good. They're fix their food, right? They can still be at a high level of fitness, but there's still always things we can dial in. But if it's not that, then we got to go deeper, and usually it's purpose driven. Usually it's okay, we're not working in what we're meant to do, and so we're experiencing a lot of friction. And so
Right.
that's step across of the fear. That might be a change of job. That might be a change of location. That might be in one of my clients' condition a change of job and change in relationship. And now he's crushing it, right? And
Yeah.
it's breaking these old ways of like, well, I can't. I'm in a relationship. It's like, well, you're not happy. She's not happy. Why? And it's like some some it's unweaving what actually the issues are. And so working through it, to answer your question specifically, Mike, is then it's execution. Then it's let's identify those small incremental 10% little extra, right? So we can get to that extraordinary life, right? That little extra. What are those small, I love that Japanese word kaizen, small incremental adjustments. Where do we need to start tweaking the dials? And okay, wake up time, mindset, some reading, some more deliberate talk, stripping away some bad habits, right? Maybe it's drinking, maybe it's whatever, maybe it's fucking simple as weed, right? Maybe it's something as simple as just, they're numbing themselves or anything that's making you avoid and distract and procrastinate is rooted anxiety. It's just you're just every day you're fighting, having to burn that off, and once we cut those things and start actioning stuff, right? Maybe it's learning a new skill, right? And then you're procrastinating on it, and you're sitting there smoking weed, knowing you should be learning a new skill, and you're not. And dude, that's stressful, right? Procrastination's
Oh, yeah.
stressful, and it's usually that people are just scared of are they going to be able to figure it out, right? Failure. But a lot of times, Mike, the answer is, dude, it's accountability. It's always accountability, and it's follow through, right? Accountability and follow through done consistently so that we can rewire the brain pathways and create new habits. That's that's
Okay.
the that's the rooted answer of how do I guide people through it.
Now, I want to get a little more specific to that question. You get first responder or military vet, and they're going through it as a result of something they encountered while at work, whether it's on a battlefield or first responder, something that has, or multiple things that have kind of messed with their head and stayed with them and caused this trauma and these depression issues. What are you telling these guys as far as how to proceed and get through these things?
Yeah, I say first. I have a few of these guys, man. Guys, the Marines that were in this and first responders, a lot of them. I say
Yeah, I know you do.
keep your world small. And what I mean by that is focus on the chopping the wood. Focus on what you have control over. A lot of times, man, you're going up and out, reflecting. Why? Right? You're not going to change anything that happened. It's also being okay
Yep.
with the acceptance. It happened. It sucked. What? So now what? Now we have two
Yeah.
choices: get better or don't. And then it's like, okay. And then once you're just honest about that, you're like, you're right. It did suck. It fucking was terrible. All right. Well, I guess that is just reality. All right. Now what do I do? All right. Now who do you want to be for yourself and the people in your life? Let's start being that lighthouse. Marcus Luttrell said something really when I was speaking to him at his house. He said something. He goes, "You had to go through it," and he was saying this for first responders and all these people that go through stuff. You had to go through it to to be able to shine after, right? You
Yeah.
can't be forged without going through the fire, man. And so all that stuff, it's the story you tell yourself about it. And so that's
Yep.
really what I get in, guys, man. What story do you tell yourself about what happened? Was
Yeah.
it a terrible thing that destroyed you, or was it a terrible thing that was the catalyst for you to be a fucking lighthouse for people?
Yep.
That's a totally different game. And so, and how do we do that though? So we don't speak in any morphic concepts. Let's make sure we're great. Let's make sure we're an example. Let's make sure we're disciplined. Let's make sure we look the part, right? Presentation. Make sure we look. Man, no one's gonna listen to your message if you're just a fucking sloppy motherfucker, right? It's
No.
all important, right? To be able to transmit a message, presentation, packaging, delivery. You want to,
Yeah.
so it's all important. And so then they go, all right, and it's bringing that empowerment back, empowering motherfuckers to go, you know what? That did happen. That was a blessing that it happened to me and not somebody else. Right. And
Yeah.
that's like that's kind of it's a powerful way to look at it.
Yeah, it's great advice. You're changing the narrative in your head. And it's almost like I was talking about before with thanking the universe. Maybe you're not thanking it, but you're
Yeah.
changing that narrative and focus to something other than making yourself a victim. Empower yourself, make yourself the victor in that you got through that shit, brother. Remember
Yeah.
that. You're fucking here. I know it sucked. It was horrible. It's not something you were supposed to see. But you know what? You were hard enough to be there to begin with, and you got through it. So you could get through anything in life.
And
That's the way
Mike,
you have to look at it.
your story, right, with the girl, man, it's it's powerful, right? Because it's now that little girl's gonna help thousands, maybe millions, right?
Yeah.
And so think about that for a second, right? And I get the chills when I think about that because the amount of lives and families that could potentially be saved or changed because of her is very real. And it's
Yeah.
all the only difference is the story you told yourself about it. Deciding to use it as a positive instead of something that destroyed just your life. Just take you down and fucking I'm just gonna drink myself in the fucking pool in Florida till I die. Right? You have that
No, it's the
option.
truth.
There's
Yeah.
nothing stopping you, bro. You could, and the fact that you're like, no, fuck that. I'm going to use this story because it happened to me for a reason. Right? Jimmy says something great, man. He goes, a man who doesn't believe in destiny doesn't have one.
True.
I was
That's
like,
you know
damn.
what? That's great. Jimmy came
I
up with that one.
fucking
Holy shit!
Yeah, Jimmy said that to me in some
That-
super off the shoot fucking. Hey, we were at the bar drinking, dude, and he said some deep shit to me, and I was like, "Damn, dude," And I'm like, when we were both in it, and but he was so right.
yeah,
It's because what does that boil down to? It's the story you're telling yourself, right? If you don't think you
absolutely.
have a destiny, guess what, brotherfucker, you don't. Somebody else has a destiny for you.
Yeah, and you know the story. I ended up reestablishing contact with Dana's family, and I wrote him a 4-page letter about how she changed the trajectory of my entire life, and through her, people's lives are going to be changed and saved, and it's already happened. And it was so powerful to me. And the parents were really touched. And I told the father, until I kind of healed from my PTSD, I didn't realize that the universe put me at your house for a reason that day. It
Yeah.
happened in 2018, and it took almost 6 years for me to realize why I was there. But I was there for a reason and a purpose,
Mm.
and that was to eventually help others and save others. And your daughter is literally changing lives through me. So it's such a powerful narrative. And, I just thank the universe for having me be there, number one. And for me, for Eddie Penny, kind of, Eddie Penny, I finally realized I didn't realize just about a year later. And I told you this subconsciously, something about him made me realize that it was okay to show emotion and cry. One of my really, really good friends committed suicide in '05. And I remember trying to make myself cry. I mean, I was super upset. I couldn't cry. And I looked in the mirror during that and I'm like, man, I'm fucking broken. What is wrong with me?
Yeah.
Jack killed himself and I can't cry. And, I thought I was broken, man, to be honest with you. You go through this career for so many years, and one day you look in the mirror and you're looking back, seeing this guy, and you're like, who the fuck is this dude, man?
Mm.
These small incremental changes add up to this big divide at some point, and you're kind of
Yeah.
wondering, like, who am I? You know, I didn't want to become this man who doesn't feel anything, and I do now, and it's a beautiful thing. I told you I went to training with GBRS Group, and I was talking to DJ Shipley, and he went through his Ibogaine plant-based journey to heal, and we were talking. I'm like, DJ, you're Team Six guy, one of the hardest warriors in the world, but you're still a human being first, and we're supposed to
Mm.
feel as human beings, man, and we didn't, and now we do. I'm like, I'm proud of the man I am, and he's like, same thing, said the same thing to me, and it's a beautiful thing that we've gone through this, healed, and come out the other side like almost like a new man in several
Yeah.
respects. It's good to be able to feel, and I didn't for years.
Yeah, and that's important for people to think, man. It's what story are you telling yourself about your life? That's the most
Yep,
important piece.
absolutely, brother. So, hey, listen, man, this was a fantastic podcast. I'm hoping, I'm not even hoping, I guarantee that a man or woman is going to watch this and it's going to help them.
Yeah,
I
and
have no
remember,
doubt.
no, if someone watching this is by design. Like I said, destiny's real. If you're watching this and you're like, this is speaking to you directly, reach out. Make that call. Don't reach out to Mike, reach out to me, reach out to somebody, or make a change. Right? And if you don't know what change to make, that's why reaching out is helpful. Don't get
Absolutely.
analysis paralysis and do nothing because you don't know what to do. Well, get with somebody who can give you some outside accountability and perspective that's been in it and knew how to, and will show you how to come out of it.
Yeah. And Bartel and I know how paralyzing it could be going through it. And I promise you, you do not have to suffer. There is help out there. There are thousands that will help you. There are thousands more going through it. And if you guys just raise your hand, you could be helped. The links to both Taylor and myself are going to be in this bio. And please reach out to one of us if you guys need it. I promise you guys we will, either one of us will respond. So, Tia, I want to thank you again. It was a very powerful podcast. Had a great time speaking as usual.
Yeah, Mike, time flies with flow state, man. Mike, thank you, and I thank everybody for watching.
Absolutely. Thanks again, guys, and we will see you soon.